Okay, check, hey, hey. That's interesting. That just goes live now. You can't check it anymore. Strange. Huh. Weird. Alright, check. Hey, 1, 2. 1, 2. Let's see. Does this work? Hey, hey. Yeah, it does. Okay, cool. Great. Check. Hey. Alright, so I guess I can just hit record on here as well, start recording. So here I'm going to talk through a little bit of the Vmix setup I have going on for the Champaign-Urbana Folk and Roots Festival. I had used Vmix in the past for some purposes of display switching in a live context, and then just some very simple streams, but I had not used Vmix for a complex stream. I had been using OBS mostly, and so while I was setting up for this one, I learned a lot. I found some things intuitive, and I found other things perhaps not so intuitive, and had to do a little bit of Googling around and forum diving and YouTube watching to figure a couple things out. And I'm still, not done, not where I want to eventually be with a Vmix setup. There are many notes I have for some future tweaks, and I'm probably not doing all of the things I'm trying to do in the most efficient way yet. But we'll get there. So let's talk about a couple things. So basically this is a Vmix layout. Up here you have your preview monitor. Over here you have your program monitor. These are 4 transitions you can set, 4 overlays you can set. And then these are a whole series of transitions. These 4 you can customize. If we show the drop down, great. You can also set your duration there. So I should have a pretty nice long duration to fade across. And I'll do that real quick with this. We'll just do a fade. Ooh, well, that didn't seem to work. I actually think the maximum you can do is 10 seconds, maybe? Let's see. No, I didn't do it either. So that one obviously does not work. How I think it does, at least. Hey, there we go. So 5 seconds works. But these you can set and customize however you like. We ended up using the cube flip a lot. I like the cube flip. And then a wipe and a wipe reverse to perhaps cut between scenes. One issue here is we did not have graphics in 16.9, which always make sure you have someone to handle all the graphics, because I certainly did not have time to update all the graphics while trying to set the stream up. Anyway, back to more of the layout here. If you click this little tab, you can show all of the inputs you have. Now this is going to be video inputs, audio inputs, and all sorts of graphics and overlays, pre-recorded media, video, audio, and if I can find it, there is also a restream in here. Well, you can also send a... Oh, there it is. This is actually an RTMP input that I'm bouncing off of this Nginx RTMP server. So we had an artist, a remote artist, stream to us, and then we were able to pull that stream into Vmix and use it as a source. And then, obviously, send it back out to our program monitor and stream it to our festival stream. So the nice thing about Vmix is you can also sort all of various inputs to these bins. This just I used it just to organize things. I imagine you may be able to bulk apply some settings this way, but I did not figure that out in the course of this festival. But using it as just for organizational purposes was very helpful. If I want to pull something up here to my preview monitor, I can just click it. So in this case, let's look at our host camera. There we go. So now I can, by right-clicking on the overlays, I can compose a shot here. I can add a title. I can also, if I want to change the title that's assigned to this overlay bin, whenever I either preview it or send it to program from down here, now that is what will be in this bin. The way I did this was I tried to, let's switch this real quick to the wide cam. So I tried to keep overlays 1, 2, and 3 as my generalized graphics. That I wanted to be able to kind of queue on and off at any time during the festival. One thing I didn't figure out was how to queue all of these together. I think I probably should have put them into a multi-view, but then if at some points I only wanted to queue one, I couldn't really do it. I guess the real way to do that would be to set this as your live, and then also have that as your preview, and there you could compose which ones you wanted, and then cut them in, perhaps. Yeah, with your T-bar there. So that's one way to go about it. I ended up usually just clicking them here. I also had these going to a tablet through web shortcuts, which I will show eventually. That was very useful, and in the future, I would like to set up an interface for someone who is just producing the aesthetic of the live stream. Let me make sure. Okay, cool. My YouTube control panel was giving me a little error there. Just wanted to make sure I still had audio coming in, and I do. So, in the future, it would be nice to have someone who could be watching this stream, then go ahead and have a control panel for the graphics. So when I'm trying to cut the live video, I don't have to worry about, oh, what graphics should be on the screen right now, what should we take off the screen right now. Now, one thing that I did figure out, which was very nice, is when I go here, I've still got Ayla McDonald, which was a host, from my last scene on the host cam, because that was the last thing I had assigned to the overlay number 4. What I found was that it's very useful before the next group would come up. I would go ahead and click the little gear on the wide camera, and I ended up by the time we were really rolling with this festival, using a lot of triggers to program repetitive actions that I was finding myself doing through the course of the stream. So it kind of increased the efficiency as we went along, and it's a super quick and easy method to automate things, and even on the fly, in the middle of a production, while we were playing back a pre-recorded video, I would often be going in and changing some triggers, setting up new triggers for upcoming scenes. So one I found very useful was on transition in, go to my overlays, and just turn off all the overlays first. Then I would go ahead and add a transition in, overlay, and I would set input 4, the overlay input 4, to whatever the next band was. In this case, let's say it was, oh, I don't know, where did the Dewclaw plus Bones Jugs? You can, I believe, reorder all these two, and in the future, I think that's what I would want to do, is group all my titles numerically in the input list, not just into the bins. But in this case, I am looking for something that I can't find. There it is. Let's say Dewclaw and Bones. So on transition in, it's going to set this to my overlay 4 input, and then I would just give it a delay of maybe, I don't know, 4 seconds or something. Now let's go back to my host cam here. So let's say we had been on the host, and I think what we'll see here is I have a trigger. Yes, I have a trigger set up on this camera. several where I'm turning off all my overlays. I'm adding this donations overlay just to make it turn on for number one. And now I'm setting the host to Charlie because the next, at this point in the live stream, Charlie was the host. So when a new host came up, I would edit that trigger. So now, let's say I'm set to go over to Dewclaw and Bones. I can now hit my cut here, and we'll see the title come up. And I might, add so all of these come up. The one potential issue is that if I'm now live cutting to this camera, this triggers every time. So if let's say I go over to one of the other cameras and now I go back to the wide, it's going to trigger that title again. This is something I did not find a solution around. There's probably an easy solution. There might even be a shortcut I could set to turn off the triggers, but I found myself during a set just quickly turning that off while they were when we first cut to them and they were introducing themselves. I would just turn off that trigger so that the next time, there we go. Another thing I might do on these is if I had all these graphics on, say, all these graphics on, what I might do is, that way it has turn all the overlays off. So that's what I was kind of getting to, is it might be useful to set turn all overlays off on all of these cameras as well, so that if I've got all my graphics on the wide shot to start, then it can cut away. Another way to do it might be to just duplicate this wide cam and have a different input set with all the graphics on it for, say, in between songs, and then have a clean wide cam as well for while we're cutting the performance. Okay, so that's kind of inputs and overlays and using triggers. One other trigger that I made use of was with pre-recorded videos. Let's say this video was in the middle because I was previewing it for content, make sure the sound's coming through, make sure it looks good. I might, we'll go back to the host cam here, which I just did using a shortcut on my tablet. What I might do here is in the triggers, I might, again, turn off my overlay inputs, restart the media, and then play it after a second, so the transition has time to finish. And then again, I would change my input 4 overlay. I also found myself unchecking automatically play with transition because I didn't necessarily want the video to just start playing. I wanted to have it make sure it had a chance to restart, and then the transition had a chance to finish, and then it would play a second later. So that made it very useful to say, we can do this transition, and it should clear all of those. There we go, it started from the beginning, and then we'll have our title come in. So triggers were very useful. I'd like to explore more of what I can do with them in the future to automate these actions and make a live feed more efficient. Okay, so the last section on this screen I'll talk about before talking about shortcuts a little bit is the, well, actually, we'll look at shortcuts first. Under settings here, in shortcuts, I have a whole bunch of shortcuts. Yeah, basically, I set a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So on 1, 2, and 3, I don't know if we can find it here somewhere. I have cuts, so that's how I was cutting the live cameras just a second ago, using the 1, 2, and 3 keys. That'll just directly cut the cameras. And then F1, F2, F3 does kind of a fade between those cameras. So that's when I really want to cut live quickly. What I found myself doing much more, though, was just setting a camera to the preview input, and then I had another series of buttons here on pause, home, page update, on everything, kind of the right side of the keyboard to do my cut, a fade, a cross zoom, a zoom, or a cube. This allowed me to set something to my preview monitor, the next camera, say, and then on beat or whenever it feels appropriate, choose the transition I want to use to get to that camera. These are traditional functions on a video mixer, on a piece of hardware video mixer generally, but in this case, it was nice to find a keyboard layout that worked, and that was something I was adjusting as I went as well. I had an initial setup and then just tweaked it as we went and made things more efficient by the end of the festival. And I would definitely change some of these shortcuts in the midst of the show too. Say like for whatever video was coming up next in the pre-record after a host spot, I would load that in here and show it on my web controller so that I wouldn't have to search for the next video in the bins and set it to the preview. I'd just be ready to go as soon as the host said, "Hey, we're going to go across to this video now." I could hit it in my web tablet, my web controller, and then we'd be live with that content. Now I would usually take those out when I was after that had played. That way on the tablet, which is a touchscreen, I'm not accidentally triggering some of these cuts. And if you look, I tend to not have the direct cuts to the program monitor in the web controller. Again, it's a touchscreen. I don't want to accidentally cut something live. So I would just set those to the preview monitor using the web controller as well, and then I could cut live using either my mouse or my keyboard buttons. In the future, I would like to explore setting up a MIDI control surface or a different type of control surface or even a little shuttle to control some of these functions. I would love to have a more traditional video mixer interface with Vmix. And I know there are plenty that you can purchase from various companies. I'm mostly familiar with the Blackmagic ones. Those are fairly expensive, so I'd like to see if there's a way to set up kind of a less expensive MIDI controller, say one of your generic MIDI controllers just with some knobs and buttons and sliders to control this in a satisfactory manner. Ideally, I would just be able to cue all of my, a certain subset of the inputs to my preview monitor, have all my cut buttons, have a real T-bar would be nice because it's a bit hard right now. Oops, see, that was a hard cut. It's a bit hard right now if I want to say cross dissolve this. This is using the mouse to do this sometimes is a little jerky, so would love to have a physical T-bar. Okay, so the last section to talk about here in Vmix and the way I have it set up is the audio section. There's a fairly extensive internal routing engine here, and if I look at my audio outputs, I have two sub buses as well as a master output and a headphone output. And the way I have this set up, I'm using a MOTU 624, and I've got it set so my master output goes to output 3 and 4, my headphones go to output 5 and 6, and my A bus goes to output 7 and 8. I could have used a B bus to another set of outputs, but I did not find a reason to during this stream. The reason I have my master output going to 3 and 4, and just to clarify, these are not necessarily physical outputs. This isn't, say, TRS jacks on the back of an audio interface. These are the virtual outputs into the DSP mixing engine of the MOTU, which I will show in a moment. Charlie's gesturing at me. This one's just going to my private YouTube right now because it's a bit, I don't know, perhaps a little bit boring for people to watch unless they're really into Vmix. No, I will in a moment. I just want to finish the audio here. So, yeah, and that was Charlie there. He was my second hand in making this production happen, and invaluable. We could have used, as we kept saying, about 10 more people on production, but we pulled it off between me and Charlie and Martin and Cody Jensen. So what he was referencing is another video which I'm going to follow this up with, where we'll have a live cam and look at the physical setup. But what I was saying is the reason I don't send my master output to channels 1 and 2 is that is what the computer uses as well. And I could just use a different sound card, use the computer's internal sound card, say, for my computer sound. But I do want that to go into the MOTU mixing engine so that I can play Spotify or something on the speakers here while we're setting up or tearing down. This would also be an interesting way if I wanted to get audio out of Zoom or something. Many applications just by default go to outputs 1 and 2, and you just can't change that. So I went to 3 and 4 to keep my Vmix output separate, headphones 5 and 6, and the A bus here 7 and 8. So we'll look at that in the MOTU in a moment here. But first, I will quickly talk about the busing setup here and the way audio mixing happens and the way what I settled on by the end. So one thing I ran into early on was that I was trying to manually mix my host mic. And that was very tedious. So again, pretty quickly, I got it set up so that if I look at my host mic here, which is actually coming in on input 3, and it's the mix post effect, so I'm using compression and EQ in the MOTU, and then I'm taking the post signal of that from my 3rd input for the host mic. If you check this automatically mix audio, what this will do is mute the audio in the master output when it is not in focus, say. So in this case, I've also taken that host mic, and I guess I could put it on my preview input and then go over, and now I've just got clapping the host mics over on the other side of the room. Now I have just a black screen with just that microphone, and that would really not happen at any point. And you see when I cut away that goes and mutes that mic again, you can see it turns blue over here. But I did want that mic to always be the audio for the host cam. So under this gear, I added in the multi-view monitor, you can see I've added a few overlays here. Multi-view essentially lets you take many inputs and combine them into one input. So I've added some logos that we have, which I also sometimes cue separately on my overlays. And then I've also added the host mic itself as a multi-view input here. So that way, when I cut my host cam in, you can see that the host mic has turned green, and now I have my host mic levels going to my master output. Now, the A bus I was using for monitoring sound in the production environment, so that when we were playing pre-recorded video, we could hear it on the main speakers here, and I could send that preview audio to various headphones for production assistance. And basically, if I hit that on A, now that's going to go to the A bus as well, and that's actually now, I think, going into my speakers there a little bit. Yes. So there we go. Yeah. So the A bus was useful when I'm playing back media to listen to that media in the house here. And I don't want that to be my master because I will often have live mics going to the master to go out to the stream, and I don't want those on the speakers here in the house. Let's see, any other audio? Oh yeah, so if you solo any of these signals, it will let you, it will then send the audio out the headphone output, which I had going to outputs 5 and 6. So then I can mix that separately in the MOTU mixing engine. That became very useful, say, when I was taking the restream that I mentioned earlier. That audio would be coming in, but we had it something else live, and I needed to do an audio check. So I could just solo out the audio from that restream and then listen to my headphone mix and preview that audio. And I also used that with all the videos to make sure the audio sounded fine before we would go live, and often with the host mic to check levels as we changed hosts. So I think that's just about everything for Vmix here. Yeah, that's where we got to. I'm sure that this software is super deep. There's a lot of settings that can happen, and there's a lot of different ways you can stream and record different feeds. And I have not experimented with all the different inputs one could use as well. But this worked really well to do a 2-day live stream event, and also one in which we had a small production team, and so we're very often needing to, on the fly, automate things and change some things around to make it more efficient. So yeah, very cool software. Excited to do more events with it. I still like OBS, and probably if I'm just doing a very simple stream, I'd use OBS. In fact, the stream we are currently watching here is indeed using OBS over here. So I am streaming this with OBS because it's just a simple display and audio capture, and I find OBS easier to set something like that up. But for any kind of massive video switching operation, Vmix is light years ahead. And I know OBS Studio has some functions that are similar as well. But Vmix was great, so looking forward to more time with it. Now, before this stream ends, I'm just going to very quickly go over to my MOTU mixing panel. Again, this is the MOTU 624, and just give a really quick rundown of how I'm doing the audio mixing in here. This is kind of our monitoring mix. And the kind of live stream mix. So what's happening here is I'll go to my routing grid real quick, and we can see that I have my outputs from Vmix, Vmix main, Vmix sub, and my A bus going into the mixer here, so into my mix in. So what I'm doing here in this mix is I have various inputs. I have my computer 1 and 2 out. Again, that's for Spotify or Zoom or Skype or whatever. I have my host mic here, which I'm applying compression and EQ to. I have this talkback mic. I'm actually speaking through this now. And you can also see that it's going to something called Cam HP, which I'll talk about in a moment. I have this Midas main was our main live mixer. This is where we were making the live mix from the stage. And then I just sent the stereo out here into the MOTU so that I could get it into Vmix and bus it around to different places we needed to monitor it here in the production environment. And then I have my Vmix main out, my Vmix solo out, which was the headphones, and the Vmix A bus out. Then this monitor output is going to my headphones here at the main production station. That way I can solo out different audio and preview it before it goes to anything else. The main mix is going into Vmix, and that is because I wanted to use this leveler plugin that the MOTU has just to give a little bit of bus compression to my mix coming out of the Midas. Here I have my main stereo speakers. These are the speakers here in the production environment in the main stage speakers here, which we weren't using during the shows, but I used to play back the audio from our pre-recorded content while it was going out to the stream. This one I actually did not end up using. It's just another aux bus to send to a different computer input. And then I have this Cam HP. The Cam HP output went to headphones that the two camera operators had. And you can see that my talkback mic, as well as the main mix out of the live Midas mixer, are going to the camera people. That way they can hear the mix, and they can hear me giving camera directions. You can see that I have the computer audio going to main stereo speakers, again, if we're listening to music or something. And then I have the A bus, as priorly mentioned, from Vmix, going out to our main stereo speakers here. I think that's it. As mentioned before, the main mix here is what's going into Vmix. We saw a MOTU main audio input before. I didn't point it out, but it's in there. And actually, I'll cut back over real quick. So that's here, and you can see that I have it not going to main or the A bus right now. That's because I wanted to make sure we weren't accidentally broadcasting audio from the stage, so I wanted to make sure I had to manually push that every time. I could, again, tie that to the multi-view inputs of our live cameras, but I just haven't settled on the precise method I want to do that with. I felt much better about just being able to unmute and mute my stage audio. So usually before a set, I'd bring down the master fader on the Midas, unmute this MOTU one, and then just fade it in manually using the control surface. So back to the MOTU. And the last thing here is the reason that the TalkBack mic is going into the main now is because I'm using it here into OBS so that I can stream out my voice to this live stream. Normally during the production, that main would go all the way down so that the only thing going to the main mix into that leveler and then into Vmix was the Midas out. Okay, so yeah, back here, and yeah, I mean, I think that's it. That's kind of some of the tech behind this festival we just did. We got to get wacky once I got the keyboard set up here with all these various cuts that we have. This one was one of my favorites. It was a lot of fun to bounce around. But yeah, on the whole, this was a great experience, and I'm pretty pleased with the setup I was able to get to using a couple audio interfaces for mixing as well as Vmix. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.